I wanted to break down and cover everything that we have learned regarding Elden Ring. And of course, hopefully you will enjoy this.
The tarnished will soon return.
An opening scene of the trailer might seem simple and even reminiscent of Sekiro, but these very few seconds can tell you a ton about the lore in the game. The words coming out of the maiden in the first scene,
The tarnished will soon return. Guided by grace, once lost.
gives us an insight into what the story, the universe, the characters are going to be like. Here the player is referred to as the Tarnished, and this implies that we are once a part of the Golden Order and we are exiled from it long ago, which adds in the interesting dynamic we'll be surely seeing in the reflections of the story. And since the maiden said, guided by the grace once lost, it might refer to the fact that the character is going to be given another chance at serving his people, perhaps in the desperate times. The massive golden and glowing tree that is showcased in the first few seconds is known as the Earth Tree, and the official site says that the Elden Ring used to be the source of that tree and that now it has been shattered. The world or the land featured in the game is ruled by Queen Marika, the Eternal, and her children have claimed all the shattered pieces of the Elden Ring, also known as the Great Ruins. These children of Marika are all demigods, and the Great Runes have given them more strength and power, which they've used to start a war called the Shattering. We, the Tarnished, are on a journey guided by the grace to bring back all of the Great Runes together and eradicate the tainted ways in the lands between and become the Elden Lord ourselves. This is most likely going to be related to the main character redeeming themselves too, in a way, which would possibly make up for their tarnished status in the society. Furthermore, according to the official website, the Tarnished were spurned by the grace of the gold and exiled, which directly confirms it too that the main character has been thrown away due to whatever mistakes or failure they've been responsible for. This gives us a bit of an insight into the story too, since the maiden says that the order is shattered to its core, referring to the war mentioned previously. So when you be putting together the fact that you're tarnished, then guided on a journey by grace, in a world where order you once belonged to is shattered, your mission might be to fix the world once more, and thus by doing it so, you might be forgiven. Near to the first minute mark in the trailer, we get to see how the actual gameplay of the game is going to look like, starting off with our mount. Having a mount to explore or travel around implies that the world is going to be massive, open, and explorable one. The mount looks like a horse but with horns, similar to the red elk Yakul from the movie Princess Mononoke. Furthermore, on the Japanese official side, the mount is actually called Spirit Horse, and this explains how our mount suddenly appears and vanishes beneath us. This mechanism seems to be adding more diversity to the game's combat. After the minute mark, we get to see some of the enemies that this fantasy world has to offer. From Software seems to have brought a lot more diverse enemies, including mounted enemies and other wandering mobs who travel around the world. Enemies also seem a lot more detailed and well thought out too, and of course the sheer scale is undoubtedly evident in every shot of this trailer. They are gigantic enemies that are going to make for incredible boss fights, and since George R.R. Martin worked on the game's lore and From Software's reputation, it is to no surprise that many of those fantasy characters happen to be unique and feel massive in scale. With how many different types of enemy sizes, techniques, and appearances there are, Elden Ring appears to be one of the most diverse games in the Souls series, and we haven't even seen everything yet. Next, we get a glimpse at how combat in the game is going to look like. You can take on the enemies either on foot or on your mount, or mix them both up for more fun. The game also features magical abilities alongside a wide variety of weapons, and also features various skills that can be found and learned while exploring the world. A very interesting thing about the mount seems to be the fact that it's not just a realistic horse that you can use to travel and jump into the combat. It has special abilities, as we can see in the trailer, that allows it to have magical properties. For example, you can see that the mount disappears when the protagonist runs into the enemies, which allows both the mount to be safe and the protagonist to jump right into the action to attack. It will definitely make more of the interesting combos with the choices to strike your enemies on the ground or while riding your horse. Players are also welcome to sneak up on the enemies to pick them off one by one, using a stealth mechanics, which is something new to the series as stealth was never really an important part of the Souls-like games, excluding Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. But here you can see that quieter approaches that are built around stealth are finally added to the game, and not only does this add something new for those who like to play games stealthily, it also acts as an alternative method for those who are replaying the game and want to try something different the second time around. The appearances of a caravan showed in the trailer seem to be something that you can rob and get a loot out of it. Now, of course, you choose to approach this in a stealthy manner or face the enemies head on with the aggression. You can summon spirit buddies to help you out in combat. You can level them up with no details on that yet, but some are useful in the battles and others aren't. But one way or another, having other players over is certainly a detail that has been shown to the players. As for the PvP, rather than co-op, the only thing we know so far is that you won't be able to use your horse in it. Which makes sense, that it would be quite awkward to, have horse riding battles against real players. To be honest, that's actually also an unfortunate part. I actually would love to see something like this as a feature. But it's mentioned that invasions are also coming back according to the interview by Miyazaki. Now the co-op. Now that will actually be less restrictive, so you won't need any certain consumables to summon online players into your world. Setting up a password or for a particular player to join, all of this will be there. Covenants will be coming back as well, of your own choice that you can join whichever you wish. You seem to be able to summon other things too, such as portals, things that you can touch to air hike yourself, and also spirits that you can throw towards enemies, such as the eagle. One of the most interesting features that might be added to the game based on a visual analyst of the trailer is the addition of movable camps. The reason this can be assumed from the visuals is it was almost a feature in Dark Souls 3 according to the modders who looked into the COD content, and it was found that From Software have been experimenting with an idea of moving your camps instead of finding them everywhere manually. With Elden Ring, it seems that the feature is finally being added, and it makes perfect sense due to how expansive the world is. And a contrast between the previous games, this is one that you're not surrounded by darkness and looking for light. Rather, you are someone who contributing towards glory and salvation, so it would make perfect sense in lore-wise too, if you can set your own camps while searching crafting materials for upgrades all over the world as well. The gameplay seems to be very versatile in terms of the moveset too this time around, which is something that makes Elden Ring similar to Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, since the Dark Souls series was more about the techniques and evading. This is further supported by an interview from the developers that say that the game is very customizable. Now, fall damage. Now that seems to be far more nerfed this time around, so that you can actually explore easier. It's probably related to the fact that the bosses seems to be far more massive as well. Stamina bar will be less influenced, perhaps similar approach to like how it was for Bloodborne. Elden Ring will have a world map, so it contains legacy dungeons, catacombs, camps and fortages. But you will need to figure out where you will be required to go if you wish to progress through the story. So the game will not hold your hand. Elden Ring actually has 6 open worlds that you can explore, and each of these worlds have their own demigods. There are areas called the Lands Between, and you can even skip more than half of those bosses to get to the endgame. Fast traveling, it is indeed coming back. Not yet certain how to access them or how much useful will they actually be. And NPCs are indeed going to be all over the world. They will have interesting tales to tell that may in fact give you motivations of exploring different areas that you may not even consider at first. And NPC also have their own versions of the stories that they will be sharing as well. Now let's talk about the skills. Well, they will be coming back and with more variety. There are around 100 total skills. One example with a backslash, it been mentioned that you do not require this particular weapon and instead you can pretty much do this move on almost all of the weapons, since you can just simply equip the skill to your own character. And also the difficulty. It's been mentioned that this game will be in fact easier. Now, of course, we cannot determine by how much, since everything will be up to the player. Hidetaka Miyazaki and George R.R. Martin have given life to a stunning fantasy world filled with grassy plains, suffocating swamps, spiraling mountains, foreboding castles, and other sights of grandeur. According from Software, this is the biggest world that they have created up to date. While all the beauty of the lands between is showed throughout the trailer, one thing that you might have easily missed is the game's weather system. The game features natural weather and time of day progression that might influence your gameplay experiences directly. Night and rainy or foggy environments hinder enemies' lines of sight, giving you the edge in stealth combat while daytime does the opposite. What's interesting about this is that the stealth in the game might be affected directly by the weather, such as the night makes you harder to spot and the rain could perhaps make it more difficult to hear you. Whether the system is as fleshed out as Sekiro's or even better, it is unknown, but we shall surely see it in time. There also seems to be wandering islands, featuring explorable buildings that they aren't easily accessible. These infiltrations serves as puzzles, adding more life to the overall open world experience. Music and voice acting also play a major role in setting the perfect mood for the world. The trailer showcases perfectly synced music alongside voice narrations that brings out the gloomy vibe of the game and gives it the iconic From Software RPG feel. What is certainly evident this time around though is the fact that the game is going to be more story driven than previous Souls-like games because after all George R.R. Martin is involved. Plus the protagonist has more lore in this time around and the supporting characters seem to have more fleshed out personality too, since they're a bit chatty. The animations, especially combat and weapons animations, give Elden Ring a Dark Souls vibe too, and some of the animations showcased in the trailer do look like they were taken straight from it. But thanks to the high quality progression of the video game's engines into 2021, you can clearly see the far more natural details to all of the characters' models, such as the rain making the protagonist characters wet, as well as the grass and leaves too. Finally, the trailer ends showing what seems to be one of the antagonists, or the main antagonist in the game, and he was also featured in the announcement trailer. This time, apart from the many arms he has sewn onto himself, he also sewn a dragon's head on him. No matter what this character's role is, he is certainly very important to the game, and it's one of the most versatile bosses since he literally has a dragon head attached to his body. This also implies that the bosses this time around will have more elemental properties since the dragon has electricity and the other characters I've mentioned has the dragon's head that breathes fire and so on. Well, that's all that we have so far in the game, and we'll surely see more footages in time that we can analyze even further. So I'm surely excited to experience all of that and eventually the game itself. Please be sure to consider supporting me on my Patreon with availability to see these sorts of special videos earlier with the additional rewards. And lastly, do check out my special videos playlist. I put the time and effort into individual videos and I'm very proud of how they have turned out to be. And at that, I'm gonna leave you go as well to my birthday. Yes, 4th of July, it is my birthday. I will be 26 if you're curious. But yeah, please consider liking, subscribing. Well, do wish me some of the birthday wishes. And anyway, have a wonderful day.